What happens when a soldier is given an unjust order and they think it's unjust? Do they have a duty to disobey that order? From what I understand, from what I learned, the idea that a soldier is indeed, that it is indeed the responsibility of a soldier not to carry forward with a manifestly illegal order, an unjust order, is a very new thing. And it hasn't been clearly worked out in courts, despite all of the international human rights accords we have.
You say that it stems from a fellow named Lasse Oppenheim, I gather, a German writer of the 1900s, who established the principle that a soldier, is excused if he's following orders. That's about what it comes down to.
That's right. That was the so-called superior orders defense was pretty much accepted from what I understand. It was part of the U.S. military code, the British military code. All Western countries kind of had this idea that if a soldier got orders to do something, they are not responsible. Then we had World War II and the Nuremberg trials, and we had the case of, well, how are we going to hold Nazis responsible for what they did? And the codes were revised. So now it is recognized that you can't simply invoke superior orders, that sometimes you get an order that is manifestly illegal, but there's still a lot legally and morally to work out in that.
That was one of the reasons I expect why a lot of people took umbrage against the Nuremberg trials, not necessarily, or not even at all because they wanted to protect Nazis, but because they said, you're invoking a new law which didn't exist before. To which my answer is, so what?
Well, right. I mean, maybe the lesson to be drawn from that is that the previous law and the legal regime was a flawed one.
Well, and worse than fraud, it was turned out to be an immoral regime, and yet that immorality was used as the defense. I was just following orders. Give me a break. Now, who knows what that's going to mean for our country in the next 10 or 15 or 20 years, because there's been a strong movement to say that whatever we did, if you disagree with it, you must nonetheless reckon with the fact that people were doing what they were ordered to do from the very highest levels.
That's right. I mean, let's take the example of officially sanctioned torture during the Bush era. No one has been held accountable, prosecuted, and one reason for that is that people say, those who defend the lack of accountability say, well, but this was what was sanctioned by the government, so why can anyone be held accountable? I do believe that the people at the top hold the most responsibility, and we should clearly recognize that when people get orders, there is a lot of pressure to follow them. But should that exonerate everyone of accountability? I don't think so.
This is a kind of a problem which arises throughout history, in that people say, well, everybody else thought this was the right thing to do, and I couldn't stand against it, and I was just carrying out my duty. Well, there comes a time when, I would say, when you have a greater responsibility than merely to carry out your duty, as of what is said to be your duty. And I think the greatest example of that in American history, and this will win me no plaudits, believe me, is Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee should never have gone with the South. He should never have fought against the Union. But the argument was, well, he is a Southerner, it's his family. Well, other members of his family, his cousin Samuel Lee, I think his name was, a Union admiral. Mm-hmm. And these tragic things occur, and I think a lot of people simply make the wrong decision about it.
This excerpt is brought to you by the Massachusetts School of Law, the leader of reform in legal education and a leader in multimedia education for the public. To view the full interview and for a full listing of MSL's programs, log on to mslaw.edu.